Hello, my name is Merle Massey. I am the coordinator for undergraduate research at the University of Saskatchewan and the coordinator for the SURE program, Student Undergraduate Research Experience. Today, we're doing a session on how to do a research poster. I have a question for anyone who's out there, and if you could just put it in the chat, we'll start with that but in one moment. As a settler Canadian of Scottish, Irish, Norwegian, Swedish, and Ukrainian tradition, I am filled with gratitude to live within Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis. I give respect to the First Nations and Métis of this place and continually value our interconnectedness through Wekutuwin. I too love this land of vast skies and tall trees, Saskatoons and blueberries, and the swift and slow waters of the Saskatchewan River. So my question is, and if you don't mind, just pop it into the chat, how many of you have ever created a poster? Or more specifically, a research poster? Rylan has? Anyone else? Yes? Anyone who hasn't? Shayla says, nope, this is her. So it's interesting. And it just says, nope, have not. So that's more. That's awesome. Well, I'm glad that you guys are here today because this will, even if you have created a poster before, my hope is that today I'll be able to do something, give you something to think about that next time around gives you an even better poster. And that's actually the first thing that you learn is that the more times you create a research poster, the better you get at it. I know that I've done it a few times and each one is slightly different for a slightly different project, but I've gotten better at them over time. These are the things that we're going to think about after today. I don't usually do a slide that says all the stuff that I want you to take home with, but I just thought I'd give you a quick overview. This is what's going on. Context, audience, the one big thing, plain language, writing as one of your thinking processes, good visuals and how and why they matter, a few design tips, and how to present with poise. So these are some of the things that we're going to talk about as we go through today. First of all, the most important thing is, why are you creating the poster? What's your context? What's the reason for creating a poster? It's not something that you're randomly just going to do and put up on the wall of your room. This isn't, a poster that you've created for a school class, back when you were in grade 5. This is an academic research poster. So what's your context? Why are you making it? Some of you, it's for a class, and that poster is going to be marked. For others, you're going to either a USask or a local conference, or perhaps an international conference of some kind to present research. And the context of that matters. So if you're going to be presenting it just at a local conference, say last week in the College of Medicine, there was an undergraduate research conference, you kind of have an idea of who the audience is. If you're presenting at an international audience, how would that change things? Another thing, why are you making a poster? Be very specific and clear what stage of research you're at, or what kind of research your poster is presenting. So if you were asked to do, for example, a literature review, and your poster is about a literature review, be really specific and say, this poster showcases the results of a literature review that I did in this class for these reasons. This is actually an interesting slide because thinking about it from a class perspective, which is more important, how smart you sound or how much your audience understands? Most of us are really worried about how smart we sound. This is our big thing. Sorry, I'm going to go back. Previous and previous. How smart we sound. We want to get good marks in class. This is important. We're aiming for medicine. We're aiming for vet med. Wherever we're going, we want to be a historian. It's important to a certain extent how smart you sound, but the secret of university is the better your audience understands you, and if they understand you the first time you tell them something, you're going to get a much better mark. The more clear and the easier that your audience finds your presentation, the better your mark. And the better your audience will respond, even if you're at a poster competition of some sort. So how much your audience understands is where I want you to go. So here's your here's kind of two ways that we think about research posters, especially nowadays. So on the right was the picture that we took in the summer of 2019 of the research posters, the undergraduate research posters that were presented at the end of summer in Convocation Hall at the very top end of the bowl. And so those are real students. Some of them you might even recognize that are around here at the University of Saskatchewan. And on the left is much more common to what we're seeing right now in our COVID time. Is what we're seeing when we present a research poster is that we are sitting in our own room and watching those posters being presented online. So not only are we looking at the posters in a much smaller context, they're not the big wall posters of 3 feet by 4 feet or 4 feet by 5 feet. They're actually only fitting on someone's computer screen, and that makes a difference on how you design it and how much you can put on it. You're also planning on presenting your poster. Every poster also has an oral component, and we'll cover that as well. So this is about what a research poster is and what it is not. So it is a visual presentation. This is like an advertisement, really, to kind of give an overview and a snapshot for your research. They're short. They're shorter than what you think. They're about, in terms of the amount of text that you write that you then put on a poster, it's just over a page, about 1 page of text. You want to concentrate on your one big thing. What's the one thing about your research that you want people to remember? And we'll talk about that in a minute. It's a visual that helps you explain the story. Posters very, very rarely just sit there on their own. They can to a certain extent. I know that some of you have walked up and down the hallways at the university and seen that there are research posters that are plastered on the walls, especially at the department level. And that's true, but you'd never really get the full extent of them. A poster is a visual that helps a person orally present their work. Here's something that people don't often think about, but the process of creating a poster is actually one of your analytical tools. In the process of putting together your poster and narrowing down whatever it is that you want to say, that is actually part of your analytical process. It helps you to understand what you did, why you did it, and how you can best explain it to someone else. What it's not a whole essay put on a big piece of paper. That's those posters that look just like a wall of text. And if you can get away and not do that, that is your best choice. It is absolutely not your whole essay. It is one slice of your research. It's also not a bunch of small graphics that no one can see or understand. We've all seen posters where the graphics are so incomprehensible that we're not even sure exactly what they are. So that matters. Your visuals matter. It's not just your results. People sometimes fall into that trap. There's like, oh, well, the results of the literature review say this. Well, no, because people who do a literature review, there's actually questions around the process. Well, what did you look at? What were your search terms? How many articles did you choose from? What were the results? So they're asking questions not just about your results, but how you phrased your research question, the process that you went through to answer your research question, the methods that you chose, the data, and then also the results. And also then, of course, your analysis and your conclusions. So it is more than just the end product. And that's the final thing. It's not just written up at the end of a project. Sometimes you'll hear that phrased, particularly in the sciences. Oh, you just do all your research and then you write it up. Writing is part of the project the whole way along. And if you go back to the left-hand side, the process of creating a poster is an analytical tool. The process of writing, keeping really good research notes all along the way, will go a long way to doing your analysis for you. It's part of the project the whole way along. So here's the question of audience. There's what you want to say, especially when you've done the research. You've got all this knowledge in your head and you want to showcase, oh my God, I learned so much and this is what I learned, and you want to tell your professor and you want to tell your audience about all of that. And I get that, but you got to think about it from the other side. What is it? What's that core thing? What does your audience actually want to know? And that's where you have to place your energy. So don't think about what you want to say. Think about what it is that your audience wants to know. Think about how your audience changes a poster. So if it's a poster for a class, what does the syllabus say? What are your guidelines? What are the expectations? What are the rules that have been set out for the class by the professor? Make sure that you follow them. It's one of the reasons why I've moved away from some of the other ways that I've taught this particular session, simply because I don't want people to get into trouble doing too creative of a poster. Make sure you follow whatever it is that the syllabus or if you're taking it to a conference, they'll have guidelines on what they expect as well. So make sure you follow those guidelines. If it's a poster for an in-person event, you have to make sure that your poster is quite appealing. Will people stop and look at it? Again, if it's that wall of text and they have to get right up there and put their reading glasses on to read it, they're not going to do that. So do make sure that your poster is not just textually really interesting and that you've got something to say, that it's also visually appealing. If you're making a poster for online and people are looking at it on a classic laptop screen, can people read it on their laptop, or is it too small? Do they have to zoom in and move all around on your poster? If they have to do that, you're probably going to lose some of your audience. You're going to have some people in your audience who won't have that ability, and they especially won't have that ability if you're doing it in some kind of a Zoom or a WebEx session where you're sharing your screen, because when you do that, the person on the other side can't actually zoom in and look at your poster and zoom in on things. All they can see is the whole poster on that small portion of their screen, just like you guys are seeing this presentation right now. It's not as full or as large as what you might want it to be. So keep that in mind. In all cases, you have to think about who's listening to you, who's reading your poster. Are you being marked? Are there prizes? Are there people that you're looking to impress because you want to land a graduate position? Who's listening to you? Who's there to see your poster? Keep that in mind. When you go to present your poster and sit down and start to think about it, this is where I want you to start. Why are you doing it? What's the larger goal? This is about your personal journey. How does this research resonate with you? What was it that drew you to this particular topic? You always want to start there. And the reason why is that it allows you and your audience, your listeners, to understand what it is about your research that gets you fired up and gets you interested and gets you thinking about the questions that you're about to take them on and the journey of learning that you're about to take your audience on through your poster. So always start there. How does this research resonate with you? The next, when you sit down to craft your poster and you're trying to figure out, well, what slice, like you've got all this research, I've got all this data. What is the one big thing that you want your audience to remember and to take away? And if they think about your poster 6 months down the road, what is that one big thing that you want them to know? And that could be one of 4 things. And these are just 4 very high level understandings of what your one big thing could be. But it could be a theory. It could be that you're proposing some kind of new idea, or you're proposing a new area of research. You say, I did a literature review and it showcased that there's this gap. That could be your one big thing. It could be your methods. It could be that you're in a lab and you developed some kind of particular new, very cool tool that your professor says, oh my gosh, you need to write that up. And so that's your methodology. And that actually can make a big difference. In our new data-driven age, your methods in terms of using algorithms or something to that effect in terms of finding journal articles might actually be very interesting to other people. So make sure you pay attention to your methods. It could be your results. Oftentimes, it's the black category because it is the most common. Most posters are there to showcase their results. But every once in a while, you get a unicorn, and that's an intervention. So that would be an example of everybody has to eat 10 goji berries a day. And if you do, you'll never, ever get cancer. That's what's considered an intervention. So your one big thing could be theory, could be a gap in the literature. It could be a new method. It could be your results, or it could be something as cool as an intervention. These are just some general areas of what your one big thing could fall under. Sometimes as academics, we get lost in the words. We want to sound smart. And so we have these academic languages, particularly around acronyms or particularly around really, really complex words. And we use these complex words thinking that we're talking about really complex or very specific subjects. But here's the reality. When you're doing a poster, you're doing it not only for yourself or your professor in most cases, you're doing it either for the rest of your class to explain it to other people, or you might be in a class where not everyone's first language is the same as your first language. That's something to consider, and especially as we're presenting for an international audience. If you use plain language, the plainest language you can, your work becomes stronger, not weaker, than if you use academic language. It will make all of your academic writing better as well. And what plain language simply means is that people understand what you say the first time you say it. How many of you have read journal articles where you had to read the first page 4 times and you still weren't quite sure what the heck they were talking about? Yeah, well, that happens to me too. And I have a PhD and I've been around the block a time or two. So that is always an indicator to me that they're not using plain language, that they're deliberately using academic language to bamboozle me. The articles that get cited the most, the strongest articles, are the ones written in plain language. Writing is absolutely an analytical tool. Your whole poster will be no more than 300 words. And if you can get it down to a page, 250 words, that's better. Writing, when you sit down to write and think about how you're going to frame your poster and what words you're going to put in, writing is about asking questions. It's about whether you agree or disagree. It allows you space to criticize. You get a chance to reflect. You get a chance to analyze. Other things you do, of course, are summarize, or you draw connections, or you showcase the problems or the gaps. These are some of the things that we do when we write, especially when we write in an academic or a research context. These are some of the classic things that we're doing. But we write in order to discover what it is that we're studying, to understand it, and then also to explain it to someone else. So that's why writing and actually sitting down to craft your poster down to that 250 or 300 words is your first big step. Albert Einstein says, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. I love this particular slide and I keep it in. My best suggestion to you is to write as soon as you start researching, because it takes longer to make a clear, short, and excellent poster. Believe me, I've published 3 books, and the best one is not the one that finally got published because, sorry, let me flip that. They're better in their final publication because I had to chop 40,000 words out of my last book. That's a lot. You need to give yourself time to do that. So don't leave it till the night before if you can at all help it. If you can write it, craft it, give it a day or 2 to rest, come back to it, then you can edit, and proofread and read it out loud and get it down to a form and a format that you think is going to work. So that's step 1. Step 2 is to plan it out. So this is where you'll use things like Post-it notes. You could hand sketch it. You could use poster paper. You could use a computer program. You also want to start gathering in your visuals. And that's where you really need to think about what visuals can you use that would really help you to express your story, to explain what it is that you want to say. So the planning process and the time it takes to do your planning process is important. Don't shortchange this, because you might find in the planning process and taking your 250 words and figuring out how you're going to put that on the page and where you want to put them. In that process, you might find that you want to move things around, that you missed something important, or that something is less important and you can take it out. That this is where you're going to find that part of the poster making. Good visual design. I'm not sure if I can emphasize this enough, but your graphics, your charts, your figures, your images, the consistency that you use, your text, good visual design matters, and it will make or break your poster. I've seen posters that have an absolute lack of consistency. So I actually borrowed this slide from a friend of mine. This is about different fonts used, various shape styles applied, different colors, all kinds of things that you can see that's going on here. And some of them have a white border, flat filling. So it's a mishmash of all kinds of different things. But if you turn it to something like this, then you get a much more unified look. When you aim for a unified look throughout your whole poster, it helps if you're creating your own graphics and you use the same program to create all the graphics. And there are lots of programs and free programs available out there that can help you. And oftentimes even PowerPoint, as long as you're using the same thing to create all of your graphics, you're going to be much further ahead. So the graphics, and you want to use them. You want to use graphics, charts, diagrams instead of text where possible. Oftentimes, images can tell the story. However, you do need to be slightly cautious. They won't tell the whole story for you. You still have to do your work, and you still have to explain that thing that over there that looks like a spider web is actually what would be called a scatter plot. And so you have to explain what it is. If you've put a visual on your poster, make sure it's there for a reason and that it's a good reason and that you can explain what that reason is and that the visual, the graphic, the diagram, the chart actually helps to further your poster and actually adds something important to the poster. If it's just there for fill, then we have a problem. Pictures also help tell a story. I'm a historian. We use pictures all the time. This is Big Bear trading at Fort Pitt in 1884. If you're going to use anyone else's image, and whether that's a graph, a chart, a picture, make sure that you cite exactly where you got it from. So you'll see in this one that I cite this as a photo. All photos have to be cited by the photographer if you know who it is, and then you say where you found it and what its call number is. So you always have to do that. Citations do matter. You can use someone else's data, charts or graphs, but you do have to cite where you got them from. Words are still necessary. Posters don't really exist without words. So this gives some ideas on text sizes. These are not written in stone. In fact, I'd probably go even higher on most of these, but these would, in terms of the size, but title 85 points, author, all the way down to captions. I've seen not just captions be 18 points or smaller, I've actually seen citations be even smaller again. So this is just a general guideline of where you can go with some of these sizes. Fonts. This actually matters too, and you'd be surprised, but it matters more than you think. Serif fonts are the ones on the left. These ones are easier to read in print. So things like Garamond, Cambria, Times New Roman, they have that little sort of leg on the end of the letter. Sans serif fonts are good for headings and presentations. So you can mix the two fonts on a poster, or you can just stick with a single font, but you'd never want to go with more than about two. So be careful. You don't want to have a mishmash of a whole bunch of font choices either. So do be careful. Now you're ready. So you can start thinking about ways that you're actually going to build your poster. The easiest way to do that is Microsoft PowerPoint. It's the most common, it's the easiest to learn, it's the easiest to use. At the University of Saskatchewan, you all have access to it. It's part of your University of Saskatchewan NSID, and so you all have access to Office. You can use things like Adobe Illustrator and Adobe InDesign, and if you have those already, then those would help you. When I say that YouTube is your friend, I'm quite serious. There are some amazing quick YouTube videos out there, particularly for PowerPoint, to show you how to make a poster in absolute jig time. And they give you I'd learned all kinds of things, just how to use Office in general. And so I do recommend it. YouTube is your friend. If you have an extra half an hour, find one or two YouTube videos that show you how to build a research poster using the software that you're using. The next is templates. You notice that there's an arrow. So communications.usask.ca has templates, and these templates at the University of Saskatchewan are branded. So they're branded with Be What the World Needs. They're branded with the University of Saskatchewan, and I do recommend that you use them. It's the easiest way for you to create a research poster, because if you were like me when I was a student, I left things to the last minute sometimes and didn't have a lot of time. So using a template will get you that much further along. Now you can always change up a template. You can make things a little bit different. And there's a few other recommendations of places to go to take a look. But Google is your friend as well. You can Google research poster templates, and you might come up with something that's really, really fun. White space. White space helps your poster breathe. So when I tell you no more than 250 to 300 words, I'm serious. And if you can get it, and the cleaner you can get it, and the fewer words you can manage to put on and still tell your story, that white space is what helps your poster to sing and breathe. What happens is that your audience doesn't get scared. They don't freak out. They can look at the whole poster and know that their eyes can be drawn to any particular space and not have to rest there for a long time or focus in too hard reading a bunch of small text. White space is your friend. We do have a few rules. These are, I call them rules, but really they're guidelines. No more than 300 words on the whole poster, 20% text, 40% figures, and 40% white space. I'm quite serious about that. The more white space you have, the better. You need a simple and consistent color scheme. If you have a color scheme where it's all over the map, you're not going to enjoy the look of your poster. You'll notice that Office always provides preset color schemes. The poster templates that come from the University of Saskatchewan have color schemes, and they're the color scheme that I'm using in this particular presentation as well. So it's very consistent. Make sure that you are using the highest resolution graphics, images, figures, and pictures that you can, and never ever put background pictures or gradients behind your text. It makes it really difficult to read. Information for an English-speaking audience needs to flow from left to right and top to bottom. So if you put columns in, that really helps. There's a few other technical tips that can help with that. Simple words. Simple words are the most powerful. Use them all the time. Don't say the word utilize if the word use is just as good. It gives you a lot more characters too. It gives you more space. After you have your text ready and you've got a draft of your poster, the Writing Center will match your assignment with an appropriate tutor for your project. So log into library.usask.ca and look for writing help, because that tutoring is free for all current U of S students, and I recommend it. In fact, I recommend it really highly. The Writing Center will give you all kinds of feedback. Now, they will not edit it for you. They are not an editing service. They provide high-level feedback, not specific line-by-line feedback. So keep that in mind. They also need time. You can't send it to them at 11 o'clock the night before and it's due at 8 o'clock the next morning. You won't get it back. You need to give them time to put their work. They are your peers after all, and they're taking classes as well. They need time to feed that into their schedule so that they can give you good feedback. There are other online resources, particularly at the library. There's resources on writing in different disciplines, constructing your argument, organizing, citations. There's some really great stuff on citations, and perfecting your grammar and punctuation. There's been a real flood of workshops. All of those workshops are all also online as well. And if you know that you've got an area where you're struggling, then definitely access those workshops, work through them, and see if you can improve your skills and bring them up just that next level. Plagiarism and citations are important. Make sure that if you go looking on the internet and you want to use an image that you found, make sure that it is registered as Creative Commons. Make sure that you are allowed to use it. Make sure you cite it. It needs to be either Creative Commons, or in some cases, because this is an academic and class-based learning opportunity, most of the time you can produce a poster where you can just provide the reference. You do need to think about if you're presenting at an online conference, or your poster is going to be uploaded onto a website or into some sort of sharing mechanism, and you've done this work with a supervisor, make sure that your supervisor is very clear that as soon as it hits the internet, it's considered published. And if it has not yet been peer reviewed, they might have an issue with that. And so make sure that you understand how the conference is sharing the posters, because that might matter. Now we get down to the mechanics. So the first time, most of the time, other times that I've given this presentation, I've always assumed that people would be walking their stuff down to Excel print and going and picking up their great big 4-foot by 3-foot poster in a day or so. And so that's why the old-fashioned printing press is there. But of course, nowadays, with COVID, of course, we are moving more and more to online presenting, and that may change a lot of things about posters. So do keep that in mind. Either way, either if you're actually printing up a physical copy or you're just presenting online, you need to know the guidelines. It's up to you. So stay within the rules. Make sure you keep to the size that they recommend or require. Ask them about orientation. That means poster or landscape. So is this sucker upright or is it sideways? So orientation matters. If it's online and they're going to be posting it to a website, ask them their requirements. And actually the same if you're going to be sending it for physical printing. Ask them the requirements. Do they want it as an image file or do they want it as a PDF file? Because that makes a difference in how you save it. How to submit, when to submit, where to submit. Pay attention to those. Know about sharing, about how they're going to share or how they need you to share it with them. Some of these files, especially if it's an image file, can end up being quite large and they may need you to send a link instead of sending the file through email, things like that. Also deadlines. Pay attention to your deadlines and stay within them. All right, last up. Sell your research to other people. This is about presenting with poise, and that really matters. This is what takes your poster from just that dead piece of paper or dead image on someone's screen and actually turns it into something that's living and breathing and that people can interact with. I really want you to do this, even if you are presenting at your computer, in your room, in your pajamas, and no one can see you. I still want you to practice your power pose in the bathroom before the poster session. So this is the Wonder Woman pose. It gives your body confidence, strength, and energy. This has been very well researched. The power pose, both this one with your hands on your hips and also the what's called the star pose with your hands up in the air, in both ways, what it does is that it opens up your rib cage, it opens up your voice, it gives your whole body confidence, strength, and energy. I do this every time I go into a job interview, and I'll tell you, it makes a difference. Every time I present, every time I go to a job interview, if I'm expected to speak, you'll find me in the bathroom 15 minutes before doing this. When you present, I want you to actually formally prepare an oral presentation and practice it. This is different than your written presentation. It's smaller. Usually they're about 3 to 5 minutes. You'd be surprised how many people launch right into their presentation and forget to introduce themselves first. So please remember to introduce yourself, who you are, and why did you get interested in this research. Then go ahead and you start with the purpose of the research. What's this research for? What's it meant to do? What's it part of? If it's part of a larger research project or a research question, how does it fit in? I do want you to write out that presentation and practice it beforehand. This is actually really critical. Some people will see that as the 3-minute elevator pitch, and that's definitely a good way to look at it. We actually have a video on the Shure website on the 3-minute elevator pitch. You can check that out. So 3 to 5 minute overview, it hits the highlights and it drives home that one big thing, the one thing that you want them to remember 6 months after the fact. Here's something that people don't always remember to do, but always say what you would do differently next time if you got to do it again, and also what areas or new questions this research opened for you. If you had the time or the energy, or you were continuing the class or whatever, or you were continuing with this particular research lab, what research question would you like to investigate next? If you answer those two things, what you would do differently next time in this project and what you'd like to research next, that takes your research to the next level. It showcases your thought process as a researcher, and I guarantee you'll get a really good response. Always thank them for their time and then invite questions. This is how you build a conversation. In most cases, there is a space and time for judges to come along or for other people to come along and ask questions about your research. You're prepared, you're ready, you're inviting their questions, asking them to come forward and engage with you. You are there to build a conversation. Here's a few neat ideas that are used. So one is a QR code. I've seen these used very effectively, especially if you're starting to run out of space or you're concerned about your poster. You can do a QR code that people would just take a picture of with their cell or click on it otherwise. And it takes them to a spot somewhere on the web that allows you to maybe put your references. Maybe you've got like a whole really long laundry list of references. That will really help. Another idea, especially if you're presenting in person, the other three really only work if you're in person. Some people like to bring an iPad and showcase some particular aspect of their research as well. If there's any pictures or images or something that would an iPad might help them to understand your research a little bit better, a short video, something to that effect, then those are good ideas if you're standing there at a real-time poster session. Leaflets, handouts are often a good idea, and I've seen them used to good effect as well. And the fourth, it looks like a box, but what that is just to think about things in 3D. So I've seen people bring models, physical models of something that they created in the lab or something that they were studying. So if you bring a physical model and use that as part of your conversation with the person to give them a few ideas and extra suggestions on how to think about your research, then those can work really well. In an online environment, the only one that works is a QR code. The rest will work back in a real-term environment. So these are a few neat ideas. So the other day I saw a poster that someone was presenting, and while they were talking, there were live embedded GIFs in the poster that were moving as we were watching it. So it should have been a static poster, but there was actually things embedded in the poster. And so the poster was actually moving as we were watching it. And it was fascinating. I'd never seen that before, but definitely the wave of the future. So something to think about as well. Other ways to share your work. So if you've done all this work to create a poster, I want to offer you as many other ways to share your work as possible. So let's say that you've shared it in the class, then you can also share it at the USSU Symposium, which will be taking place at the end of January. Or you can send your research to USearch, the University of Saskatchewan Undergraduate Research Journal, and submit a research snapshot. Students who work in the summer with a faculty member are always welcome to join the SURE Summer Symposium. Also, I do recommend disciplinary conferences. If you see an advertisement or you see a link to a disciplinary conference that your poster would qualify for, then there is no reason not to present your poster there as well. So these are other ways to share your work. And that's it. So my final thoughts is that the process of creating a poster, the more posters that you create, the better you get at the process. But the three biggest things to remind you of is less is more. The fewer words you can manage, the better you can edit it down to actually get to the core of what you want to say, the better your poster will be. Make sure that your visuals are excellent. Make sure that you leave lots and lots of white space. Make sure you think about the one big thing. It's more than three things. I think I've got five. The one big thing that you want everyone to remember. And the fifth thing is to practice your presentation. So those are the 5 things that I want you to come away with. Does anyone have any questions from this? And I will stop the recording and we'll open it up for questions.